Good morning. Looks like we're about a minute early, but I think we can get started. A couple of announcements as we start. First off, today, Lord willing, we go back to our meals and afternoon services. You won't believe the pressure of getting the this day in history back again, and it's been about a year and a half, and so the pressure to have that right. But we'll have that here this morning, probably downstairs. So after we're done eating, we will just stay downstairs. We'll sing some songs and go from there. Don't imagine it will be a long service. We'll try to keep the Sunday afternoons kind of shorter. But we encourage you to stay as we look at August 1st and the application of that as well. Tuesday night, again, Lord willing, is National Night Out. We encourage you to be there for that if you are able to man or woman the table. That would be wonderful. We'll have a church table. I think most of my family will be serving the food. And so if there's somebody that would be able to even take turns in being at our table, that would be wonderful. There's a kind of a lot going on Tuesday night, and this is 100% my responsibility. So there's a lot of balls in the air. In fact, even this afternoon, we have to go pick up some potato salad and get everything ready for that. And so Tuesday, 5 to 7 at the park, right behind, if you know where Leeser Insurance Agency is, right behind them. We'll be at the park there from 5 to 7 and encourage you to be a part of that. Free hot dogs and bratwurst and obviously potato salad and a few other items as well. And looking forward to that. I think in the culture that we are in, the objective of National Night Out is kind of connecting or reconnecting communities and police departments. We're expanding it to fire and ambulance and sheriff's department and a number of other organizations that we hope will also be there. But I think in the culture that we are now living in, things like that are very important to make sure that the communities are connected with those that unfortunately many times have become the enemy, and wrongfully so. And so that'll be Tuesday night. Encourage you to be there if you're able to. Thursday night, we'll say more about this here in a moment, but I believe that Thursday night's Praiseman concert in Chillicothe has been canceled. And so that, I think, is no longer on the calendar. I had thought about seeing if we could get them scheduled, and they'll have the stage set up for Old Settlers and just putting them outside. And but I think there's going to be a lot of logistics to get that done quickly, and housing and food and all of those details. And so we may just wait and see what happens, and more than likely they may just be done. Then Saturday Saturday, Sunday is Old Settlers. Saturday we have a parade, but we're not doing anything, correct? And so I guess that's just more of a Toulon informational thing, a public service announcement. If you're interested in being a part of the Old Settlers here in Toulon, we have fireworks Friday night, and then, which is also my 100% responsibility, but that's pretty easy. Make a phone call and say, hey, can you guys be here? Here's your check. And then make sure everything's cordoned off as it's supposed to be. But anyway, that Friday night, fireworks down by the school. Saturday is a parade and a bunch of other events going on throughout the day, and we'll see how that goes. I will be giving, no, I won't, but the police department, I haven't figured out how to take this, but the police department is getting some golf carts for us to drive around so that we're a little more mobile this year. And the police chief called me to say, I'm going to get 2 of them. I thought, well, that's great, because there's quite a few of us that he likes to have on the clock, so to speak, over the weekend. And he's like, one of them is just going to be yours. And then the police department's going to share the rest. I'm thinking, what are you saying? Do I look like I can't walk at all, or what are you saying? But he seemed to think that our family always does a lot, and he wanted to make sure that any of us in our family would have a golf cart to drive around for Old Settlers. So for $1 a ride, I can take you wherever wherever you like. Shuttle service from your car to wherever. There'll be no problems at all. No questions asked, we hope. But anyway, continuing on, then the last Sunday of August, more than likely will be remote. And so again, we encourage you, it'd be great if at least some of you could be here in case we had people showing up. But it may be a video of the service, and then you can watch from home as well if you'd like to do that. But that'll be August 29th, and we'll go from there. I think that's it. Nothing else. Again, since we'll probably be doing the...
I do think of coolers.
Oh, yes.
I don't know what we have, but I know you mentioned we could use some coolers for freeze pots, and I could use coolers for other food that we have to have for National Night Out. So if anyone has coolers that they could let us borrow, use, super. I'm just throwing that out there, because we even have a lot of food for the event. I know it's not the church, but still we have
Yes.
to keep it cold, so.
Yes. Hot dogs and bratwurst don't take up a whole lot of room, but when you have 300 of them, it does start to... And then, what do we have, about 72 pounds of potato salad? We may be having leftover potato salad next Sunday. But anyway,
So coolers.
yes, coolers would be great, and since we'll probably be doing the meal again from this point forward, I guess either talk directly with my wife or pay attention to Facebook, and she'll post every week of what is needed and what we're eating. Since we're having hamburgers and hot dogs, well, we'll post that. We'll see what we do. Anyway, moving on, some prayer requests. There's our list from our app as of last night anyway. Some ones that we wanted to specifically mention. Archer is having, I think this was on our app, is having surgery on Tuesday. This is not a, like a new development type of a thing. They had their choice. They were given a choice this last week. You can either put in a G-tube, which will basically just be the port that they can hook up a pump to from home, or, so you'd have to take a G-tube and then he could be home within 3 to 5 days after the surgery, or leave him in the hospital and let him figure out how to eat and gain all of his muscle tone that he needs to be able to do all the eating. And when he does that, then they can take him home, but then he won't need any extra peripherals. And so they decided that they would like to have him home, so they're doing the G-tube surgery. Obviously, that's done frequently, but certainly a concern as a parent. And then the follow-up and getting him home potentially then, I guess that'd be sometime probably next weekend, if I were to guess. And so be in prayer for Archer here this week. And then the reason that the Maranatha group, unlikely, or more than likely, I should say, is canceled this week is, like we were praying for Calvary in Peoria, that's Calvary in Chillicothe, if I'm not mistaken. Calvary Baptist in Chillicothe, which is where this event was going to be at, is having a COVID outbreak. And Pastor and Jan Nelson, who now attend there and live in Chillicothe, have been hospitalized with COVID. And as of, I believe, last Wednesday, they've canceled all their services, including Wednesday and Sunday. And I haven't heard beyond that, but I've got to think that if they're canceling their services this weekend, that it would seem unlikely that they would have a Maranatha group there on Thursday. Besides the fact that it may be unlikely that anybody's going to want to go there if they're having a COVID outbreak anyway. But as of Thursday morning, they had 12 people in their church that were pretty serious with COVID. And obviously the Nelsons in the hospital, so we want to be in prayer for the Nelsons. They have had a lot of health issues of late, and so this is certainly a concern. So be in prayer for Pastor and Jan Nelson. Any other updates or new requests? Anything back there, Kate? Anybody online there, back there, Kate? Perfect. Any other?
Seems to be some advancement for Bennett, the little boy that was in the farming accident.
Yes.
He has now been able to, ventilators out.
Very good.
He's been able to sit in a chair for short periods of time. I get an update almost every evening from the grandmother, and one day it's a really good day, and the next day we had a little hiccup today.
Yes.
No specifics. I have no idea what happened, just
Yes.
not giving them out at all.
Yes.
So, she said we've got a long road ahead of us. Last night, she said, but today was a pretty good day.
Very
So
good.
he's still in the intensive care, but there is some improvement.
Yes, very good. Anybody else? Now let's go to Lord in prayer. Lord, we thank you again for your goodness. We thank you that you are, as always, aware of every need there on the screen, every need in our hearts and our lives, certainly every need of those involved that were mentioned specifically here this morning. We thank you for that. We thank you for the confidence, the comfort that we can have, and knowing that you are a God that doesn't need us to come before you so that you become aware, but that you've asked us to come before you so that we can show our dependence upon you. And I just pray that for those that are going through some struggles right now, that you would remind them of who you are, that they would be able to understand who they are in your eyes, and that they'd be able to rejoice in what you are doing, even in the unknown, even in the midst of those storms. We certainly do pray for little Archer here this week, and the surgery and the follow-up and the potential of being able to come home finally this next weekend. I just pray that you be with Ben and Emily, and certainly Shar as well, as they all await that time. But I pray that you give them patience as well as they perform this procedure, and then just wait for the full recovery. And I just pray that you would certainly go before, and as well as we know, right alongside the entire family as they go through this here this week. So I do pray for the Nelsons as well. Pastor and Jan both hospitalized with COVID. I just pray that you would give them the health, the strength. I don't know any other specific details, but I certainly do ask that you would be with family, that you would certainly direct them as a couple as they wait on you, and give them the strength and the health that is so desperately needed at this point. And we, again, thank you for what you will do. And for as Bennett, and certainly unaware of all the details, but we rejoice in the fact that you know every single detail. I do pray that you continue to be on the road that is yet ahead, the couple steps forward and a couple steps back, but I do pray that you would just continue to bring progress. We thank you for the removal of the ventilator and just even the progress that is evident there. But yet I pray that you just continue to show your presence in the continued journey yet ahead. And for the other requests, certainly they're on our screen. Again, certainly in our hearts and our lives that we haven't shared, we haven't put on a screen, but you are just as aware of those as well. I pray that we would be able to rejoice in you, in the mountains and the valleys, that we would be able to hope in you, even when at times our world seems upside down. And we thank you for who you are and who you will always continue to be. We give you the glory for it. In Jesus' name, amen. At this time, we have some special music from a bunch of ladies.
Someday the trumpet will sound, and God should worship us all to
Very good, thank you. Speaking of music, another, I guess, announcement that I should start promoting because it will be here before we know it. I was able to get Peter Wright scheduled to be here. It will at least be him and his wife. It may be as well their youngest daughter. Still waiting to determine her schedule. But he asked if they could do it on October 3rd. Our anniversary is the middle of the month, so this will be like a week earlier than we may have normally scheduled it, but it worked best for them. So October 3rd, we'll be celebrating 60 years as a church, and we'll have the Wrights here, and kind of looking forward to several specific events for that weekend as well, and encourage you to keep that in your minds and even invite for that. That would be a great service. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they will be doing the life of Daniel in song, as they did at least one character, if not twice we've had them do that. I can't recall right now. But anyway, this year, as they travel around the churches, this year is Daniel. And so we will be hearing of the life of Daniel on October 3rd with at least 2 Wrights, if not more Wrights. And then, because I know Caitlin will appreciate this, the Friday night before that, so what would that be, the 1st, right? October 1st. Well, she's going to be on the cross-country team at Maranatha, and on that Friday night before our anniversary, so if you want to make a whole weekend of it, their team is going to be in Rock Island, and you can go and harass her, throw tomatoes or whatever you like as she runs by, because she would love that. Water balloons would be good, too. With tomatoes and water balloons would be something that I'm certain she would appreciate, especially right at the finish line. Just bombard her at the finish line, and she will love that. What was that? No tomato? Oh, no tomatoes. Just water balloons. But anyway, well, we can get you more information if you're interested in that as well. We enjoyed having when the boys were, or at least one of them, Matt, AJ. So I don't know that they've done this every year, but it was convenient when AJ, when he was on the team, was there, and that very weekend, Kate will be here, so we'll see how that works. They're hoping to be able to come, or we are hoping they'll be able to come home that weekend for our anniversary service, and depends on what Becca's schedule will be. Caitlin may actually be here on Friday night and may have to go back to campus and then come back. We'll see how that all works out on their schedule. But anyway, that's not really anybody's problem except for theirs. We are going to be in Numbers chapter 33 here this morning. In fact, it seems like the last several weeks we have gone over a large section of verses, and I made the comment, we're not going to read all these verses. Well, this chapter is definitely going to be one that I will say I'm not going to read all these verses, mostly because there's a lot of city location names that, well, frankly, I just don't want to have to pronounce. So that's just how that's going to work out. But we want to look at the thinking as we continue on. What are we thinking in 2022? The thinking that often says, I got this, I can handle this. There's no problems here, especially when it comes to kind of as an application, our response to our own sin. I've got this, I can handle this. And I think there's times where we can find ourselves in great trouble because we don't take it and we don't see it as seriously as God sees it. And so before we dive into Numbers chapter 33, let's begin with the word of prayer. Dear Lord, we thank you again for your word. We do thank you for the time that we can be together as we look to your word. I pray that you challenge our hearts, our lives, our steps. I do ask again that you allow me to decrease, that you alone would increase here this morning. And I just pray that we'd be able to grasp this message, we'd be able to grasp the application, that we'd be able to see in our own hearts and lives how often we perhaps have a casual attitude towards even the temptation of sin in our own hearts and our lives. I just ask that you would remind us of the lessons that we have that constantly surround us, that we might be able to learn, that we might be able to grow, that we might be able to move forward for you, and we give you the glory for it. In Jesus' name, amen. Years ago, and probably more years than I'd want to acknowledge now, Paul Harvey was on the radio, and he once told a story about how Eskimos have the ability to kill, and I know I always pronounce this, I think my wife often laughs at me when I pronounce the W-O-L-F, wolf, Is that correct? Wolf? Wolf. Sometimes I say it and my wife just laughs. I don't know if my hair's standing up or if I'm saying something wrong. But anyway, you know the wild dog that I'm talking about there. He once Paul Harvey told a story about how these Eskimos are so often able to kill these wild animals without causing great harm to themselves. And so he says, step number one, this Eskimo will coat a knife blade with fresh blood and then freeze that blood onto the knife. Once it is completely frozen, he will put another layer of fresh blood. Freeze it again. Another layer. Before long, you can no longer distinguish that this is a knife. This is perhaps just a glob of blood. Well, it doesn't take long before that said animal begins to pick up the scent of blood. And their nose leads them right to this knife that has been securely planted in the ground, poking up through the snow or ice. And all that the wolf can see is blood, and he begins to lick. And our dog is certainly as far away from, he's more closely related, I believe, to a cat than a wolf. But I could totally see my dog doing this, our dog doing this, Becca's dog doing it, I'll be honest here. Becca's dog doing this. He begins to lick, and he gets that first taste of blood in his mouth, and with great excitement, they begin to lick faster and faster and faster. And as he begins to lick, the frozen blood begins to thaw, and it feeds to an even greater desire, his need, his want for more. Before long, the dog does not realize that the blood he is now tasting is his own blood. By morning, the Eskimo comes back to that knife and finds a dead dog who literally licked himself to death on a knife. Now, that's a morbid, gross, and I can see by your faces. Nobody is ready for bratwurst and hot dogs at this point. But it's a great illustration, if we could say it this way, in regards to how our complacent attitude towards our own sin becomes very much like that dog licking a knife. We get just a taste and we think, well, this isn't bad. Certainly there's others that are doing much worse. We get another taste, and that second taste leads us to the desire for a third and a fourth and a fifth. And before long, we have become entrapped. We have become in bondage. We have become defeated by the very thing that we thought we could handle. By the very thing that we thought, I'm not going to let this get out of hand. I'm not going to let this get out of control. And so if I have this thinking, I can handle this. If you wanted to put your own title up there, I would recommend this. Stop licking the knife. Stop licking the knife. And there's a few things that we need to stop doing or be able to see the alarms and the red flags around us to be able to learn and grow so that we might be able to be not the dog that continues to lick even though he literally is destroying the inside of his mouth. We need to be the kind of person, the kind of Christian that is able to be alert enough to say, wait a minute, this is going to be to my own demise. This is going to be to my own hurt. I've got to stop. So in verse 1, we begin, it says, these are the journeys of the children of Israel which went forth of the land of Egypt with their armies under the hand of Moses and Aaron. And Moses wrote their goings out according to the journeys by the commandment of the Lord. And these are their journeys according to their goings out. And they departed from Ramses in the first month on the 15th day. That's another word, or basically it's a city of Egypt. So verse 3 takes us all the way back to Egypt. And we have kind of a summary, very quick summary there in verse 4. For the Egyptians buried all their firstborn, which the Lord had smitten among them upon their gods. Also the Lord executed judgment. And the children of Israel removed themselves from Egypt and pitched to Succoth. And then if you can continue on, it says, and they departed. Verse 7, and they removed. In verse 8, and they departed. In verse 9, and they removed. And verse 10, and they removed. And they removed. You can just continue to see this. And there's a location listed every time. And if you can look more closely at towards the end of several of those verses, it will say, and they pitched, or they encamped. Which kind of a funny thing is in the Hebrew, those are the same words. I don't know why there's, especially in the King James, why they differentiated. Sometimes they encamped and sometimes they pitched. Same Hebrew word, so I guess it was just whatever word they decided to translate it for. But anyway, I think the first point that is important for us to remember in reminding ourselves that we can't handle this, that we've got to stop licking the knife, is we need to not forget the journey. I counted correctly, there are 42 camps listed in this chapter, within those 40 years of their wanderings. Most of those locations are completely unknown to scholars today. They aren't cities. They weren't cities when they were there. They were a location where they found water, and God or Moses or Aaron or somebody else named that location for something that happened there, a blessing that God gave to them, something they found out about God in that location, and so they named that spot this name, and they continued on. There's no city. There may not have been any wells that were dug, and so going back geographically and historically, it's an unknown where most of these places are. It's an unknown what is involved even with most of those places, because not all of them are even described in the narrative of the Exodus. But what I think is important to understand is they went from one spot to the next spot to the next spot to the next. And for the first 2 years of their travelings, those leadings, in fact, they spent a lot of time, it was just over a year in one spot, as they got the law and as they kind of learned more of their God there. But in the remainder of that second year, and I should say, the either end of that year time frame, they traveled in the eventual destination of the land that God had promised to them. For the next 38 years then, they wandered as the older generation died off. Reminding ourselves then that as we look at these names, and I haven't read but one of them, but 42 names are listed in this chapter of places that they pitched a tent. In the last 38 years, many of those places have, what I want to say, a sense of sorrow, a sense of loss for all of those that are alive at this point. Because all of those that are alive at this point have lost parents, have lost aunts and uncles, have lost grandparents, and they've buried them in those locations. Mary was recently in Mountain Home, Arkansas. And Mountain Home, Arkansas is a location that my family has been visiting for years. Well, since I was in third grade, we've been visiting Mountain Home, Arkansas area. And my grandparents had some restaurants that they liked in Mountain Home, Arkansas. In fact, it was the closest place to them that actually had stores and Walmarts and restaurants and whatnot. And so usually when we go visit them, we would wind up in Mountain Home. And as we got older and our families got older and Bob and I got married and our family began to grow, no longer for obvious reasons, whereas at the time where we visit grandparents and we all sleep in the living room on the floor, when my parents started renting cabins. And many of those cabins were right on the edge of Mountain Home, Arkansas. My wife and I were engaged in Mountain Home, and her wedding band was bought from Mountain Home. And so there's a lot of connection that we have to Mountain Home. But in February of 2003, we were called back to Mountain Home to spend the last week of my grandmother's life there at, Baxter County Regional Hospital, or whatever the name of it, the Mountain Home Hospital. And we said our final goodbyes to my grandma in Mountain Home. And ever since 2003, while we still have a lot of great memories of Mountain Home now has a new meaning for us, for me. It certainly doesn't overshadow all the other memories, and frankly, as we are being reminded of it with Mary's travels and stories, honestly, I would love to go back to Mountain Home and visit that area and visit my grandparents' grave and go harass their pastor, who I think is still there, and just be in that area. I think that's a great area of the country. Mary and her brother retired down there. We could all just go visit once in a while. We could all know what Mountain Home, Arkansas area was like. But nonetheless, it becomes now when someone says Mountain Home, not only do I say, hey, I've been there, but in the back of my mind, I also say, there's something that is now connected with Mountain Home. Grew up in, we moved a lot growing up, but much of my childhood was in Downers Grove, and in similar fashion. My grandpa passed away in the I just lost it. The hospital in Downers Grove, I forget its name. Good Samaritan Hospital there in Downers Grove, kind of on the northern edge of Downers Grove. And the same similar thing. A lot of memories from Downers Grove, but there's that connection. When we look at all these city names, they're, frankly, from my vantage point, they are a lot of vowels and consonants that seem to be put together in the wrong way to produce names that are really hard to say as we read them, and uncertainty of really how it is supposed to be said according to the Hebrew. But as Moses recorded these names, and as this passage would have been read to them later, they would have been able to hear words like Mountain Home, Arkansas, and know that's where. There's a connection there. That's where we did this. That's where we struggled here. That's where we buried this person. And more than likely, because there was, 600,000 of them that they buried in 38 years. It wasn't just this person. It was these persons. Hundreds of them were buried in every one of these locations. So every one of these locations has great significance. And now, even to get more personal, imagine taking a step away from that. You know what I'm trying to say? Imagine burying your parents and then hearing the sound the next morning saying, all right, we're packing up, we're moving out. Knowing that this wasn't like returning to Mountain Home, Arkansas, that I know I can still go and get lukewarm food and super, super, super hot coffee if asked for, as will seem to be always the case. And yet, in their day and age, this was probably a goodbye that there was no revisiting. There was no going back. There was no visiting a cemetery. There's no visiting a tombstone. As they headed out that next morning, this was that's now my past, and we're moving on. What I also think is of great significance, in fact, I think is of great application for this, I think I have that up there on the screen. The word journeys, as we have there in the first verse, these are the journeys. When I think of the journeys as we would define it in our modern day English, the journeys would have kind of that idea of here's where we started and here's where we ended, and here's a compilation of the journey. What happened along the way. But literally this word in the Hebrew is not so much about the action of going from point A to point B, but it literally is a word that means the idea of pulling up the stakes, of the goodbyes, of the we are no longer here, we are moving forward. It is a word that looks back, not forward, if I can say it that way. And I know we are to, as Paul says, we are to press towards the mark for the prize of the high calling that is before us. And we are to keep our eyes focused on Christ. But what is interesting by the very use of the word there in verse 1, this is not just a look back because it is of their history. This is a look back at their looking back. This is a looking back. This is a recording of every one of those moments when they pulled up the stakes and they left their past behind. And I find the wording that is used in this chapter very intriguing. To be able to look back at our looking back. We were recently commenting, which I think is kind of a funny thought. Certainly we haven't moved around as much as my family did when I was growing up. Now we pretty much stayed in the same area, just different homes and different communities. But we were commenting that what is funny is AJ and Matt, before they went to college, they lived in 3 different states. Born in Wisconsin, then we spent some time in South Carolina, back to Wisconsin, and then obviously here in Toulon. My 2 daughters have only lived in Toulon, but 2 houses, this one and ours. Josiah has only lived in 1 house for his entirety of his 10 years. He's lived in 1 home. And we just thought, what a difference. Here the boys literally were residents of 3 different states, and to this point, Josiah hasn't even left the home he was born in yet, which I know 10 years isn't that long of a time frame, but it is, considering that pretty much every year of my school age growing up, we pretty much had a different address at times for every year that we were until a certain point where we stayed. You know, there's always that, as we consider our journeys, as we consider our looking back of our looking backs, I know that we all have those memories, those maybe goodbyes, it could even be something as our looking back at my daughter just graduated from high school. You get to that senior year and you do an automatic look back at your last 4 years. You get to the end of college years and you do that automatic looking back over the last 4 years, and you wonder, how did that just happen? How did I get through all of that? You get to a 10-year-old and you look back at the last 10 years and say, well, he used to be so cute and innocent and quiet. Now we have a rambunctious little, oftentimes dirty-kneed little boy. And we have those time frames of those looking backs. Last weekend, my brother Bob and his wife Tammy were in South Carolina at the memorial service of her dad. When we were in Greenville for that year, they were pretty much the only people we knew in that area. Besides the Winches, they were there as well, but the Winches and Bob's in-laws were the only people that we knew in the Greenville area. And we became pretty good friends. In fact, we went to church with them for much of the time that we were down there. And they had us over for dinner. They loved our boys, AJ and Matt. And I recall, to look back at my looking back, I recall as we made a decision to return back to Wisconsin and kind of jump into the ministry and get our lives started in that direction. We had too much junk. To put it frankly, we had no money, so we couldn't afford a very big moving truck. And we had to categorize everything it was just a small house that we had, but we had to categorize, we want that, we may not need that. And so put everything we want in the truck first, and then we sort out what was left. And most of it that was left that really had no value, we put it out at the curb. But I think we had if I'm not mistaken, we had a grill and we had a bike. That seemed a little more important than just putting out at the curb, but yet there was no way we could get it in the truck. And so literally we locked the doors of the home that we were renting, and I think if I recall, we had the bike tied onto the back of the truck with bungee cords, and I think the grill we kind of had in pieces in different places throughout our vehicle, but not enough room to make it a comfortable ride. And we drove over to Bob's in-laws, the Smiths, and we dropped them off for them. So they'd take our grill, they'd take our bike, and kind of with the instructions, if you don't want them, someone else will. And their church was 1,200 people. Surely you're going to have somebody that's going to use a bike or a grill. Well, AJ and Matt were inside, and Mrs. Smith, or Miff, as they would call him, Mrs. Miff was, I think, getting them some lemonade and some treats that she always did whenever we visited. And so they were busy, and Lonnie and I walked out to the truck to untie the things, to put the grill back together in the assorted locations that we had it. And he gave me a hug goodbye and said something along the lines of, we're really going to miss you guys not being around here and watching your little guys growing up and all that. And in the hug and in the handshake, he handed me a wad of money. And I had kind of observed him as we were walking that he literally pulled everything out of his wallet. So I had now he's going to try to pull something on me. And sure enough, as he gives me that hug, he gives me this big hug and kind of whispers into me, we're going to miss you guys. We're going to miss watching your boys grow up, or whatever it was. And then he got out of the hug and he gave me a handshake, and there, you know how you do that. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, this is everything I saw you. You just took everything out of your wallet. And I knew what you were going to do, but I'm going to do everything I'm going to do. So I said, no, we don't want your money. We don't, no. And I believe his exact words were, if you don't take this, we are going to kidnap your children and you will never see them again. So, I mean, what was I supposed to do? It really wasn't much, Mrs. Miff still has the boys in the house, so if I want to see my boys ever again, I guess I've got to take what he has just now taken out of his wallet. The truth is all of us have those looking backs at the looking backs. Here's the question. Because God commanded Moses to write this down, have we learned what we were supposed to learn from the looking backs of the looking backs? All of us, I already mentioned my grandparents. All of us have times and locations where those looking backs are a little more tender than other times. Our looking back as we've said goodbye to loved ones is a very different looking back from the senior year of high school looking back. But have we learned, even in the most difficult times, that our God was there and that he was doing what only he could do as he taught us the lessons we needed to learn in that moment? This first 49 verses has little significance probably to us because we don't know these places. We didn't walk in those places. We didn't set our tents up in those places and then pull the stakes out. But they did. But what we do have is we have enough of our journeys today where we've had to pull up a stake and know there's something that God has brought me through that I need to know more about him through. Are we aware? Don't forget the journey. And I don't want to make that just a trite statement. Don't forget the journey. Meaning from A to B. Because that's not what this is about. This is about the Lord took them from place to place, from location to location. Many of these names indicative of what God did for them in those places. And the very name is not a city, it's not a metropolitan area. It's not even many times a well that they could gather around. It literally is named because in this spot God did this. Therefore we are calling this city, or this area, not a city, we're calling this area, this campsite, this name. And as they hear that name once again, their minds immediately go back to, oh yes, that place, this happened. In this place, this happened. In this place, this happened. And hopefully, as Moses records this for them, they are able to learn. Don't forget the journey. Do we understand the journey? All of the words in 49 verses are about pulling up the stakes. They're about going out, has that idea of the exiting. It's not a forward-looking, it's a backwards-looking. And I don't believe that God has an intention that we always have our eyes focused backwards. That's not the point here. But I do believe that there's a very strong point in that as we are reminded of where we have been. We realize that where we are now took stepping stones to get there. And each of those stepping stones, if we did it right, if we are looking rightly, every one of those stepping stones was a step of progress, of growth that our God brought us through to get us to where we are right now. Don't forget that journey. Because when we do, it leads us to take one more lick on that knife blade. When we forgot what God has brought us through, what we've learned of him, what we've gleaned from him, where we've been in a very difficult time and our God brought us through it, if we forget those things, we'll become more sufficient in ourselves, more convinced, I got this, I can do this, and it's one more lick on the knife. Don't forget the journey. Secondly, not only don't forget the journey, but we're going to jump ahead after all of those location names to verse 50. Don't neglect the duty. Verse 50. And the Lord spake unto Moses in the plains of Moab by Jordan near Jericho, saying, now let me just stop right here. The first 49 verses in real time, as we are in the real time of Numbers chapter 34, all of that has been in their past. And so we are, through the pen of Moses, so to speak, not that he had a pen, but through the writing of Moses, they are, at this point, remembering all of their past. And as we get to verse 50, now we're in their present. So, in the plains of Moab, which is where they are right in the moment, by Jordan, near Jericho, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, when ye are passed over Jordan into the land of Canaan, then ye shall drive out all the inhabitants of the land from before you, and destroy all their pictures, and destroy all their molten images, and quite pluck down all their high places, and ye shall dispossess the inhabitants of the land and dwell therein, for I have given you the land to possess it. And you shall divide the land by lot for an inheritance among your families. And to the more ye shall give the more inheritance, and to the fewer ye shall give the less inheritance. Every man's inheritance shall be in the place where his lot falleth, according to the tribes of your fathers ye shall inherit. There's several responsibilities. I have 4 of them listed out there that they were supposed to. Here's their duty. Don't neglect their duty. Don't neglect their responsibility. Don't neglect the job that God gave and set before them. Drive out the inhabitants, to use the exact King James word there. Destroy their pictures, and destroy their molten images, and destroy their high places. Now, driving out the inhabitants, this is not just about giving them an eviction notice and asking them kindly to leave. We gather in other locations throughout the time frame of this time frame that driving out meant killing them, destroy them from off the face of the earth. So when it says drive out the inhabitants, it's about death, it's about destruction, it's about truly removing the inhabitants of the land, because this is now your land. Don't leave anyone left. This is your land. Second responsibility was destroying pictures. Now this was before Kodak, obviously. This has nothing to do with pictures. I guess in our church, which we have, and I'm thankful for it, we have a more simpler a church facility. If we could put the modern day definition of what our quote unquote pictures would be, probably the best I could say is that cross behind us, probably the coal thing back there on the back wall. Downstairs, obviously we have some pictures, plaque type things, but a lot of things we have some downstairs, and I know it's been over a year and a half since some of you have even been in our basement, but in our basement we have some signs, it'll say faith. We have one that is supposed to be like the nails of the cross in the form of a cross. We just have some different things. Not that they are pictures, but in essence that they are representations of biblical truth, if we can say it that way. This is obviously not the cross of Christ, nor is that one. But they are representations of something that is of great significance to us. Different than, number 3, the molten images. But this is more of, they use kind of the loose definition of the word picture. It is a picture of something of great religious significance. To us, the cross. To us, the faith. To us, the nails. Obviously, those aren't actually the nail spikes that were used for Christ, but it's a picture. It's a representation. So destroy those pictures that are going to link the Canaanites with their polytheism. Destroy that. All the representations. Destroy their molten images. It is obviously those graven images, those idols. Destroy them. And then as well it says to ultimately to destroy, to tear down, to obliterate is technically the exact definition, if you wanted it, to obliterate the high places. Now, this one I think would be one of the more difficult, because if I'm not into polytheism, you know what I'm trying to say? Obviously, to me and within Christianity, to destroy a representation of the cross would be a difficult thing for me to do. But there are some, and I don't want to get specifics, but there are, even in the worship of Satan, there's some emblems that are used that I want nothing to do with. If you ask me to go and destroy those, no problems. I will gladly destroy those. I will wipe them off. There will be no remnants of them at all. And so many of the pictures and even of the molten images that they are being asked to destroy, there'd be no connection to an extent. Now, there would be, for the molten images, there may be some precious stones that were used in gold and whatnot that would certainly have some value. I would dare say that in probably both number 2 and number 3, there'd be some things that would be like, wow, that's kind of cool looking. I wouldn't mind keeping that one. But yet they're told to destroy them all. But the high places, I would dare say, would be a little more challenging. If you recall our discussion on the high places from many chapters ago now, before the adultery and idolatry that took place among the children of Israel, the high places were always going to be places of great importance and significance, but of great beauty and elevation many times. And so as we were describing that very location where the nation of Israel fell, it was undoubtedly set on the very top of a hill with an amazing view. If there could be waterfalls around, the high place would have been right next to the waterfall, if you understand what I'm trying to say. But not only that, as far as we look at these high places, if you are on Facebook, and especially if you are on Facebook and you follow AJ, this last week, they did another tour of several significant places in Jerusalem. And if you know anything about Jerusalem, you know that pretty much all of the biblical, and all the areas of significance, biblical significance, have now got, we call those amazing architecture, but cathedrals or mosques or whatever it might be to cover up. Now, granted, while we may not, or AJ may not have any agreement at all with the now denomination religion that is now established this monument in that location, that monument is now the representation of that location, if you understand what I'm trying to say. I probably would not have a problem in destroying a lot of the paganism that would be involved, but it would be much more difficult if God said, now go into that area and destroy those buildings, those locations. That would be one of those, wow. Because there's some amazing grandeur, there's some amazing architecture, there is some amazing sites that are there in Jerusalem area that are obviously incorrectly made to bring glory to themselves instead of what actually did happen there. But it would be hard to destroy that, I would find. Not that I would say that I want those things to be there. I have mentioned before, I have never really had a great desire to go to Israel because of that very reason. If there was a way that I could go to Israel and actually see these locations without a mosque covering up the place, if I could actually go and see this thing without having to go into the basement of a Catholic church and looking through the floor of the glass floor, and if I could actually go and tour these things in that regard, I would have probably been there several times by now, especially this year with AJ there. But I've always thought there's just something, it just seems so, we talk about what am I trying to say, the commercialization of Christmas. This seems like it to the nth degree. Far, far to the nth degree. But when they are just told to destroy, to tear down, to obliterate the high places, many of these high places would have been of great grandeur. And yes, while they may not have at all agreed with the paganism involved, with the temple prostitution involved, even in that time frame, while they certainly would not have been in agreement with the ideology involved, I've got to say that there were high places that were built that were just like the pictures AJ shared this week, that you look at and you say, this is amazing. This is a thing of beauty. Because they're not building a church building like this around the tomb of Christ. They're building a cathedral that is, you walk in and your mouth just automatically drops open and you're going, and you just look up and you go, wow. That's what these high places were. Not probably architecturally to that extent, but I can guarantee you that these were the wow places of that day and age. And God says, you go in there and you obliterate, the word having that idea of you leave no even hint that was ever there before. I've got to think that for me, for us perhaps today, especially as there's probably even a greater significance of architecture and art and the wow factor, I've got to think that would be really hard to do. And we know they many times failed at that. They left high places up when they should have obliterated those high places. But we can't neglect the duty. We can't justify it, and we can't come up with except for this one thing. Lord, I know that this is what you have for me, but this is so beautiful, this is so amazing, this is so perfect. No, we can't neglect the duty. This is a big deal. This is of great significance. Now, to kind of give you a specific application here. We all probably have, many of us have smartphones, and we all know how easy it is to become controlled by smartphones, right? That's probably all of us were aware of that possibility. Let me say it this way. We are all aware of others who are controlled by smartphones, do we not? When I mention being controlled by a smartphone, we all can think in our minds immediately, probably for all of us. One person came in your mind. Oh, yeah, like so-and-so. Here's the hard part. Do you have a problem with your smartphone? Here's the problem. When other people hear the word, well, you know about those people that have problems with their smartphone, in their minds is the first name that comes to their mind, your name? Here's what I'm trying to get at. We can easily think of others that, whoa, yeah, that's them. But in our own life, we are blind to the reality of our licking the knife blade. This isn't a problem for me. It is for them, and there's blood running out of our mouths because we won't stop licking. But in our own minds, we can't grasp the fact that we are completely controlled by it. Now, for that other person, we know that we can easily say, we can get our self-righteousness on and say, they really should be putting God in a much greater importance in their life. Instead of social media, instead of whatever it is that they're doing, instead of sitting on their phone all day and night, just doing this and not being able to be more than 2 feet away from their phone for longer than 2 minutes. And we can all think of those that have that problem. But are we willing to acknowledge that problem in our own lives? Are we willing to understand the significance of that problem in our own life? Do we continue to lick the knife and to convince ourselves, this isn't hurting me. This isn't a problem in my life. This isn't something. When God says, I want you to offer your body as a living sacrifice, it doesn't mean that we can't have a smartphone. But it does mean we shouldn't allow ourselves to be controlled and dictated by anything else but Him. And when we are we honest and humble enough and bold enough to say, I shouldn't have this. If I can't control it, I shouldn't have this. We were in Verizon not that long ago. They still sell flip phones. I can't believe they're still being sold. In fact, when we were in Verizon, they sold flip phones and you had to pay for them. Literally, I turn around and you can get Samsung whatever for free. It says free on it. And I look over here on the back wall, there's 2 flip phone out, and you only have 2 choices now, and you got to pay for them. I'm thinking to myself, you can get that one for free, and you've got to pay. It was only like $9 a month if you did the payment plan, but $9 a month for it. But you multiply that by 24, and you're scratching your head saying, why would anybody do that? Why would you? Well, here's a good reason. I can't even reach my phone; it's right there. But if you can't put your phone down, maybe you need a flip phone. If that is keeping you from moving forward for God, and ultimately, and I've said this before, our definition of friendship, of interaction with each other, has been redefined by those things. And if our idea of interaction is solely through a phone and a device and social media, can I say this? We need to go back to flip phones. We've got to do what is necessary to be able to say, no, that's not how I'm going to define what friendship is. I'm not going to learn about a struggle in somebody's life because they posted about it on Facebook. If I am going to be a friend like God has called me to be a friend, should have known about that before they posted it on Facebook. And if I didn't know about the death in the family, if I didn't know about the illness, if I didn't know about this or that until they posted it for the whole world to see, can I say this honestly and boldly? Shame on me for not being the kind of friend that God called us to be. And maybe we need to set beside and say, what, maybe this is getting a little out of hand. Maybe a flip phone is what I need. Take it the same thing. We've often mocked even to the extent that when Bill Dustin has been here, he's laughed at himself for doing it. Remember when Bill Dustin was a high schooler? It was before I was obviously here. May have even been before I was born. He preached a message in this church, and he threw a TV out that window right there. And I know it was that window because he told me it was that window. He got all wound up about the evils of television and how it was controlling lives, and he had a TV sitting right down there, and he picked it up, he opened that window, and he chucked it into the field next door. They didn't even, I don't believe they even owned that field. That was somebody else's property. He chucked a TV onto their yard and said, this is what we need to be doing. When there's things in our life that we have lost our own control, our own focus, and it has taken over, we've got to start chucking things out the window. Now, I think Christians should be able to have the attitude that says, if I'm becoming controlled by my phone, I'll get rid of it. If I can't help but watch television all on my waking, I'll turn it off. I'll get rid of my television. I don't need it. If internet is causing a problem, you don't have to have the internet. You could still, I know this is going to surprise us all, you can still survive. But here's the problem. We continue to lick the knife. That's a problem they have. not me. Destroy their inhabitants, destroy their pictures, destroy their molten images, destroy their high places. It doesn't matter how beautiful they are. It doesn't matter how much value it is. It doesn't matter how elaborate it is. Remove them from the very face of the earth so that there is no semblance, any hint, any concept that ever was there before. That was their duty. They failed, as we will find out. But that was their duty. And while we are not the children of Israel and we don't have that responsibility for our land, I think there's other applications that we have to be humble and honest enough to say, no. If social media is now my definition of friendship, I'm going to disconnect so I learn what it means to be a friend. Look in the Word of God and determine what it means. It has nothing to do with posting and liking somebody else's post. It has the idea of coming alongside of them and walking on the journey with them. That's what we were called to do. Lastly, and I'm out of time, but continue on. This is the hard one. Because, if we could do it because of the first 2 points, because there is a judge, because there is a God, because there is one who is always righteous, who is always holy, who is not buying our justification, who is not accepting our arguments, who is not being led astray by what we see with our own eyes, who is not convinced that, oh yeah, it is them that has a problem, but not you, Art Newthorne. You've got that. No, we have a God who is always righteous, who is always holy, who always knows and always sees. And verse 55 says this, but if you will not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then it shall come to pass that those things which ye let remain of them shall he prick in your eyes, and thorns in your sides, and shall vex you in the land wherein ye dwell. Moreover, it shall come to pass that I shall do unto you as I thought to do unto them. What does God say? Again, 4 points. They will be pricks in your eye. Have you ever had something stuck in your eye and you can't get it out? And you just, well, in high school, Bob and I, and a friend of ours in high school, his name was Rob, we started a lawn mowing business. We within 1 year, I think we had 50 yards, which in Chicago area is not very much land. But it is a lot of money because even back when I was a child, people paid a ridiculous amount of money to have their yards mowed. There would be a yard, that green grass right here would be a large yard in many suburbs, many areas of the suburbs. And it would not be uncommon for someone to pay you $50 to mow that. And so the three of us said, wow, $50, that's $12 a piece. And that will take us, with three of us mowing, 3 minutes. $12 for every 3 minutes is not a bad gig. And so we built up to about 50 yards, and we kept ourselves pretty busy, and all three of us did a lot of movement forward and paying for our college from doing that. But as working with Rob, I don't know what his deal was. I think he had very sensitive eyes, but he was always rubbing his eyes. And I was always the driver, because it was our van that we used. And so I'd be in the driver's seat. Rob was usually next to me because he was in my grade and we were good friends. And Bob would be in the one bench we had in the van behind us, and then our mowers and weed eaters and all that would be in the back of the van. And I'd look over at Rob and he's doing this. And he would just like dig, and I thought to him, oh, man, and it just looked gross. It looked disgusting. I'm like, dude. So I look over and I'm like, what's going on over there? What's going on over there, Rob? And Rob would say, I got something in my eye. And I said, I see it. He's like, really? I've been trying to get this out. I said, it's your finger. It's your finger that's in your eye, Rob. And he would not stop. He'd just keep rubbing, and his eye would turn all red. I'm like, would you're making it worse to stop? Well, I got something in my eye, and I can't get it. We've all had those situations where you cannot get that out of whatever it is, and it becomes an irritant. If you don't do your job, the very thing that you excuse as not being a problem is going to be that irritant in your eye that you cannot get out. You've tried every trick. You've thrown water in your eye. You've held it open and sprayed water in your eye. You've rubbed the daylights out of your eye. You've tried to make yourself cry. You've done everything you can do, and you can't get it's that constant irritation. You don't do what God has called you to do, children of Israel. Those things that you've left will become that thing in your eye that you can't get out. Secondly, they will become like thorns in your side. Have you ever had a thorn in your side? I've had a lot of thorns in my hands and my arms. I don't know that I've ever had a thorn in my side. And when you talk about a thorn in the side, it's not normally just a little sliver like we talk about in our hands. It's actually it's a pretty big thing. They can become very painful. I recall getting one, I think we were working on the parsonage, and I got a sliver from some of the lumber, and it would not come out. I think it was in my thumb. And it was in there it was deep in there, and we tried digging it out. We couldn't, it would just start bleeding everywhere, and I could not get it out, but it just hurt. And before long, the whole end of my thumb was just red and infected. And my grandpa would have said to soak it in Epsom salt. But Epsom salt wasn't my thing, especially in that time frame. And so I would just try to, and every night I'd work on it a little bit more, and it just made it worse. The more I worked at it, the more it hurt. And I know this sounds very disgusting, but one night, it was like 6 weeks after it happened, and so for 6 weeks, I've been trying to get this thing out. I sit down and I said, I've had enough. I've got to get this thing out. And I kid you not, I just squeezed the size of my thumb, and that thing, I kid you not, shot out. It went, I was sitting on my bed, it cleared our bed and went about 10 feet from where I was. It just went boom, pew. I was like, whoa! Did you just see that? That was cool! And as well, it was instant relief. Instant relief. And my wife was sitting next to me on the bed. She says, that's gross. That is gross. It's like, oh, we got to go find it. We're digging. There was like shag carpet in our bedroom. We're digging on a shag carpet. I wanted to see, what was that thing? It just came shooting on me. And it went so fast, I didn't even get to see what it was. You know, can you imagine? It says you excuse it. It becomes not only that thing in your eye, it's just that constant irritant that you cannot get out, and it just drives you mad. It becomes a thorn in your side. Continuing on, it says, I'm gonna kind of make the application here. It says, and you shall vex you in the land wherein you dwell. That word vex literally has that idea of it will be a severe cramp. Again, personal story. Have you ever woke up in the middle of the night and just stretched? And it's usually my calf. I'll stretch my toes or, whatever, and you get that instant, I don't know what you call it, Charlie horse, whatever that is. And suddenly your foot is like this now, and you can't figure out how do you get that thing to work now. And you're trying to move with that hurts. That hurts. And I'll just sit up and I'll just start rubbing your foot, now this is my hand, but your foot is like all bent, all weird like, and you can't figure out what do you need to do to stop that? It hurts. They will become like that. Oh, no, you don't understand. This is not such a big deal. I've got this under control. It's not that big of a deal. It's not a problem in my life. I've got this. God says, no, wait. If you don't, think of the eye. Think of that thorn. Think of that cramp that just keeps you from doing what you need to do. Furthermore, verse 56, think of this. Think of me. I will do to you what you were supposed to do to them. Now, that's Old Testament, that's them. We live in the age of grace, and God is not saying those things to us for this time frame while we are here on this earth, but we have the same God. And I think a lot of times we neglect the reality of who he is. Oh, I got this. This is no big deal. I'll just find. We can get by. It's their problem, but not mine. Let's remember our God. Let's remember who he is, how he sees it, what he acknowledges. Can I say this to us? We've got to stop licking the knife. We've got to stop licking the knife and becoming hungrier while we do it. Number one, because that's just plain disgusting. Number two, because it's not conducive for life. It's not conducive for blessings. It's not conducive for living a life that brings honor and glory to our God. Stop licking the knife. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you again for your word. I do pray that you would challenge us as we consider how often in our own lives we get that proverbial knife that we just continue to lick, convincing ourselves that this isn't the problem. This is actually good for us. This is wonderful for us. And we lose sight of the danger it is for us. I pray that we be bold enough, that we learn even from this command, but as well the knowledge we all have of the failure of the children of Israel to observe all these commands. that we be able to learn from that and understand the importance, the significance of those, as we call them, little things in our life, that we define as not that big of a deal. When we justify and say, we've got this under control, it's nothing to worry about. I pray that we'd understand the great significance, that we will learn from our journey, that we would grow from our journey, and that you would use us as we do. In Jesus' name, amen.